Well, hey everybody, happy Sunday. Everybody doing okay? Good? Awesome, good. My name's John. I'm one of the pastors, and so glad you guys found your way in here this morning. Special shout out to those of you who are joining us online today. We always do such a good job to welcome our crowd. If you guys would help me do that today. Thank you guys for doing that. Hey, real fast, if you don't know this and you weren't around last weekend, this is just our second week of actually going to the new service schedule. And just by way of information, last Sunday was actually the most people that we've had on a Sunday for a worship service that wasn't a holiday since I've been around, almost 5 years. So we're off to a really great start as far as the new service times go. That was awesome and something to celebrate. April kind of mentioned this before, but as we get spread out over the morning, a longer period of time, it's going to be important to stay connected over some of the things that you really need to know about and to celebrate. And so last weekend, you may or may not have saw this or experienced this, but we had an adult son baptize a mother. We had parents baptize their children. We had another adult respond at 11:30 and chose to accept Jesus and was baptized. And then Tuesday, I got invited to go up to Jekyll, and a couple was celebrating their 31st anniversary, and they wanted to be baptized so that they had a new anniversary to celebrate going forward. And so just some things that you all should be aware of to celebrate. Yeah. And then if you want the beach baptism package, that costs extra, but we're happy to do that. So you're welcome to do that. So hey, today we're going to hang out in a story, true story that happened to Jesus, an episode of his life in John chapter 5. If you have a Bible and you want to get there, and I want to set it up this way to say that you and I are passing down something to the people that we're trying to lead. And we started last week by saying the two most important jobs you really have as an adult, especially a parent, is to love God and then lead your family. Today's going to be an all play for everyone, but that's kind of the foundation. And we're passing down something to the people we're trying to lead. And it may be something that we learned. It may be something in our life that we experienced. It may be something that we were handed down to us by the people who led us, but we're handing down something to the people that we're trying to influence. And what we're handing down is, and this is my proposition, a version of ourselves. And sometimes that can be a very positive thing, and then other times it's not so much. And honestly, most of us have a version of ourselves that sometimes is in need of healing, and it's in need of wholeness. And if we don't notice it or actually address it or take the necessary steps to heal it, it will get transferred to the people around us. Now, my wife, Chris, and I, we got married when we were in college. I was 22, she was 20, and then I graduated a year and a half later. About a month after I graduated, our first kid, our son Jordan, was born. About a week or two after he was born, I started my first full-time job as a pastor. And so all these things were happening at the same time. I'm learning how to be a husband. I'm still learning how to be a dad. I'm learning how to be a pastor. And all the while, I still wasn't really sure who I was as a man, okay? We were kids raising kids. Anybody else? Was that your situation? Okay, that's what was happening there. And so a couple of years later, the first administrative assistant I ever had would say to me oftentimes, "John, you have more issues than Sports Illustrated." Can anybody relate to that? And it would be years, okay, before we each, and that's me and my wife, Chris, started learning more about ourselves and how we grew up, the effects of our families, our hurts, why we do the kinds of things that we do. And we didn't really know it at the time, but we were essentially wounded parents who needed a lot of work and healing. I mean, how do I raise this kid to actually know themselves when I'm not really sure who I am? Okay, so that's just kind of part of the story. Some of you, though, like us, you have that sense right now that you could be doing a better job, right? Or maybe you have that nagging feeling that we're potentially passing down an unhealthy version of ourselves to our kids. And so the running joke in our family for years has always been, "Hey kids, we didn't really save very well for your college, but we did save and we will pay for your counseling." So we had enough foresight for that. So the question I want to ask today is, what might things be like if I could hand down a healthier or a healed version of me to the people around me? So what I want to do today is just kind of teach you a story And then I'm going to apply it in a way that I'm willing to admit may not be fully what was intended, but I talked to God a lot about that this week, and he assured me it was okay for our purposes in this series, okay? And what I'm proposing is that a healthy version of you and me is the very best thing that we can offer to produce healthy people around us, okay? So we're gonna do some hard work today. I do believe it can be some healing work. John chapter 5, verse 1, a Jewish festival took place, and Jesus and a whole bunch of other people went to Jerusalem. By the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there's a pool called Bethesda in Aramaic, has 5 colonnades, and within these lay a large number of disabled, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. So here's the situation, okay? Jesus walks over to a pool that's about the size of a football field, okay? And it has this colonnade, and it's got these porches, and it overlooks this water. It was built as a monument to wealth and prosperity, but all of the residents are people who are sick and diseased, okay? All kinds of people in need of healing. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who have come here or have been brought here to have a shot at a miracle. And there's this local urban legend, I guess, if you will, that an angel would visit the pool and stir the waters. And so when people saw the water moving, the first person who got into the water believed that they would be healed. So people come, they sit here, they wait, and they watch. Then John says, when Jesus saw him lying there and realized he had already been there a long time, he said to him, okay, so he's gonna start the conversation with an interesting question, and here it is. Hey, do you wanna get well? Do you wanna get well, right? And I don't know about you, but it seems like a strange question to ask. Like, do I really need to answer that, okay? Look where I'm at, man. Think about it this way. Soon you guys are gonna be heading out on vacation, and some of us are gonna be driving down or up 95, and if you have kids, it's likely that there's gonna be some fighting in the back seat. Does that sound like a possible scenario? And when I remember our kids were younger, okay, I can't break cruise because we're on a mission, we gotta get to this place. And so I'm blindly, wildly swinging at something behind me. Anybody else done that? There's somebody back there, I'm gonna get something, okay? And then we'll say something ridiculous like, hey, do you want me to come back there? And if you're a smart aleck like me as a kid, you would go, yes, I'd like to see that, because I know that we can't stop right now. Or this one, hey, do you want me to pull this car over? And you're like, well, yeah, no, I don't want that. The answer is obvious, okay? So you picture what life is like for this man in the first century, okay? He lives his entire life on a mat that's probably 3 feet wide by 6 feet long. He's dependent on someone to feed him, to clothe him, to carry him, to change him when there's a mess, okay? He'll never know the sense of independence that we prize. He can't really contribute to society, probably can't work, so he sits here and he begs, has very little influence and not a whole lot of a future. So you imagine his life, okay? He's laying by this pool day after day, so close to what you actually believe could be the solution to being well and not being able to do anything about it. And let's add this, he's suffering from a stigma in the ancient world in which people believed that those who suffered like this have maybe brought it upon themselves through their sins. And then you have this question that Jesus asked, which seems insensitive, right? Or at least insulting, to go, hey, I know that you've been unable to walk for almost 4 decades, but do you want to get well? I mean, like, really, is that what you really want? Again, the answer seems obvious. He says, sir, the disabled man answered, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, someone gets down ahead of me. How many of you know that some people who say they can't get well really mean they won't get well or they don't want to get well? I mean, not every sick person wants to get better, okay? Work with me here for a minute, okay? What if, and I'm going to throw this out here, what if he's actually looking for reasons to not get into the water? Okay, there may be some times, okay, in the past when I've had a sore throat and a cough, and I'll go home and I'll say, I really need to call the doctor. A day or two will go by and my wife will go, did you call the doctor? And I'll say, well, no. And she'll say, okay, well, why not? It's a very simple conversation. Most of you have probably had it before. And here's why. Because there's a part of me that likes being sick. I mean, I can lay around and watch movies. I don't have to come in here and go to the office. And if I actually get well, people stop picking up after me and then bringing me ice cream whenever I ask for it, right? This guy right here is taken care of, and people are sympathetic to him. I mean, it's not an ideal life, but you can see how it could be a comfortable life. I mean, some people after long periods of sickness actually lose the will to get better. And after years of maybe laying around a pool, right, maybe you start to believe that it's just always going to be like this, or things are never going to change. And so instead of saying yes, right, yes, I want to get well, he starts to make excuses. Hey, I tried, I can't, no one will help me, and I'm too slow. Listen, if he's looking for sympathy from Jesus, I mean, Jesus has something better, because he says this. He says, hey, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Jesus tells him to do three things, right? Hey, get up. Listen, you've been healed. You just don't know it yet, but if you stand up, you'll realize it. He says, pick up, right? Get all your stuff, everything you own, take it with you, because you are not coming back to this place again, and walk. Man, you got to take a step, right? There's an action required on your part to move in a new direction. And I think the wording in verse 8 is so important. The sequence that says, instantly the man got well. Then he picked up his mat and he started to walk. Two important things I think that you have to notice here. One, healing does not seem to be tied to his faith, right? Jesus doesn't even ask him, hey, do you believe that I can do this? He skips over that. And two, the healing doesn't seem to be tied to his obedience. I mean, read the sequence there, right? He's healed first, and then he does what Jesus says. Meaning, I think he's healed like period, and he could continue to lay there if he wants and not actually realize it, but he actually has to believe that it is possible to get up and to walk out in clear view of everybody else who's watching right now, so that the healing is realized. Okay, so question. Why does Jesus walk out of his way, walk into Jerusalem, go to this pool, which is a virtual sick ward of hundreds of people? It's like a TV preacher's dream right here, okay? Pick one guy and say, do you want to get well? Maybe this will help. Next thing, that day was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, hey man, it's the Sabbath. You can't pick up your mat. What are you doing? See, in order to honor the commandment to not work on the Sabbath, there's hundreds of other peripheral rules, right, that we make up so no one will actually break the real law. Healing's on the list. Can't do that on the Sabbath, right? Carrying your sleeping bag, can't do that either. Verse 11, he replied, okay, the man who made me well told me, pick up your mat and walk. Well, who's the man that told you, pick up your mat and walk? But the man who was healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. I actually really love that. I mean, we know that what we know about Jesus is Jesus doesn't really always play by the rules. Jesus makes the rules. And I think Jesus does the healing partly just because he can, and then he walks away. After this, it says, Jesus found him in the temple and said, hey, I see, look, you're well. Do not sin anymore, so that something worse doesn't happen to you. And the man went and reported to the Jews, it was Jesus who made him well. Now, it's possible, okay, that his condition was tied to a sin in his life. Or maybe what Jesus is giving here is a warning. Hey, listen, man, now that you have two good legs, you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do before. Don't use your new life, okay, to do bad things, or you just might find yourself worse off than paralyzed. I don't know, but let me ask you this. What made this man healthy? What made this man well or whole? Was it his faith? I don't think so. He doesn't even know Jesus' name until afterward. This is so important if you checked out. I think what makes this man well is the grace and the mercy and the power of Jesus and Jesus alone, okay? To prove that as the Son of God, he has the power to make you well. And this man's part, okay, is to simply believe that he has already been healed and start living in that new reality. Every time we talk about physical healing, okay, in the scriptures, I've said it before, I'll say it every time. One, Jesus doesn't heal everybody. And while sometimes a person's faith led to the miracles didn't always lead to faith. But two, physical healing always points to spiritual healing. Okay, Jesus heals the legs, but the legs are really just a symptom of the larger problem, right? It's a representation of what life looks like without Jesus and Jesus alone reaching down in and touching your life, okay? Body, mind, heart, and soul. I know of a couple in which the wife was hit by a drunk driver when she was 16 years old. She lost the lower part of her right leg. While they're dating, okay, he starts pulling away from the relationship and he admits, I'm struggling with what it might mean to actually marry someone who's physically handicapped. She said two things. One, you know what? I don't know what makes you think that for the past 10 years when I'm dreaming about my knight in shining armor that he would be bald at the age of 22. That's number one. Two, then she said this, what you have to understand is that everybody in the world is handicapped. Everyone should have a blue placard they hang from the rearview mirror. The only difference between me and everyone else is that you can see my handicap. Everyone else has the ability to disguise theirs. We're all invalids. Two questions. Number one, and I put them opposite on your notes, I apologize. Number one, what is your sickness? Or where do you need healing? So for the next few minutes, I'm going to go kind of against the normal teaching, which is go for something very specific, and I'm just going to throw out a bunch of stuff, okay, and see what sticks, all right? Because I believe we all have something, okay? And if nothing here really connects, like in a one-to-one, I believe it will bring something to the surface. For some of us, what we need is spiritual healing, okay? And that's an all play according to the Bible. Is that we each have this sickness that is called sin, and it's eating away at and eroding our life. It happens in the way that we choose to live by our terms. We're going to do it our way. We're going to think that we know what's best, or that we're not hurting anyone, or no one's going to tell us what to do or how to live, and not even God's going to do that. And we know it's not working, by the way. And we know it's not working, but we keep doing the same thing over and over and ending up back in the same place, and we're not making any progress in our life or our relationships, and we still feel the distance between us and God. And we might treat the sickness different ways, okay? We might mask it, we might cover it, we might hide it, we might just get busy and try to ignore it, but wake up tomorrow and guess what? We're still sick. The scriptures teach over and over again that if we don't address the sickness through Jesus, eventually that condition becomes terminal. And the only solution, right, to be healed in your soul by Jesus is Jesus alone, who literally offers to do this amazing thing, to come down, reach into your life, pull out the thing that's making you sick, remove it, and then put something better in that place, right? Offer forgiveness, offer a new outlook on life, offer a relationship with God the Father to show us that there's a better way to live, and to do that for those of us who in humility will admit our need and place our trust in Him. We talk about this almost every week. That's something you could actually do today. You simply need to admit that your way isn't working. That all of the things you've tried before have not gotten you any further spiritually. And if you could actually find a solution, you probably would have found it by now. Just admit that deep down inside, right, I have this desire to be healthy and whole and healed. spiritually. Now, you may need to choose what we've been privileged enough to see every week this year. You may choose to be baptized today by getting into the water, right, and letting kind of this whole physical participation in being washed and cleansed represent this life that God has for you to be clean and forgiven and made new. You need spiritual healing. For others of us, the sickness is physical. And when I say that, I know I walk a fine line between the things that you can actually do something about and the things that you simply need to accept and recognize and deal with the best that you can. But this is my plea. Please don't ignore it. Because our physical health, okay, how we process it, how we deal with it, how our attitude about it can greatly affect the people around us. Give you an example. Early 2020, my wife was having me do all different kinds of checkups, okay? I just turned 50, and so we're going to every possible doctor you can imagine to make sure that I could walk out of there with good check marks. And one of those included the fact that she didn't think I was hearing very well. That's what she would say from time to time, or something like that. I don't know. She wanted me to go to an audiologist for a hearing test, okay? So for the most part, and the way I remember it, okay, is that I did fairly well on those tests, except there was one tone, he says, in particular, that I was having trouble hearing. And I'm really not making this up, y'all. It turns out it's the exact same tone as the sound of my wife's voice, okay? Or any other tone, but it just happened. Okay. And then COVID canceled all kinds of appointments for all of us and follow-up visits and that kind of thing. And after that, eventually that doctor closed down his practice, but my wife didn't let it go. And so she made another appointment for me this past week with a new audiologist. And of course, I don't want to go because I think I'm fine. And those of you who had talked to me down front go, I think you probably ought to go. And her argument while we're driving to the appointment was very convincing and convicting, and it went something like this. Listen, you have a wonderful granddaughter who's about to start talking, and you don't want to miss her say your name. Hey, it might be a disease, an injury, something was done to you, a case in which your body's turned against you, or something just isn't working right. So are you doing what you can and was in your control, okay, when it comes to your physical health, diet, nutrition, exercise, rest, doctors and their recommendations? Okay, for others of us, the healing is relational. Hey, you're the one who did something to someone to cause distance, a grudge that you're holding, right, a bitterness that you won't let go of, and it's affecting everyone around you. Or something was done to you, right? Something you inherited or you were taught or was handed down to you from your parents or your family that now you're passing along to someone else. And there's this whole other world, by the way, in which we need to probably do an entire series around to unpack when it comes to family, but it's crucial to consider. And I relate to the great theologian Ted Lasso when he said this. He said, I love to meet people's moms. Where is it? There it is. See it? I love to meet people's moms. It's an instruction manual for why they're nuts. Same reaction in the first service, nervous laughter. I would have laughed. You should have laughed. It's fine, even if you're sitting next to your mom. She knows. Many of us need to look at what we were handed from our family that's deeply affected us. And your mother didn't nurture you, and your father was absent. Maybe you have lasting scars or tendencies that you received from a family member. And whatever you've inherited or learned and how you've been hurt, if not addressed, right, the very best, we reproduce it. At worst, it will continue to hurt your family. You need relational healing. This is not an exhaustive list, but for many of us, and we'll just land here, the sickness is emotional or mental. Right? It's a memory, it's a trauma, it's a fear, it's a betrayal, an addiction, it's anxiety, it's a depression. I mean, we all have these histories and we have these hurts. And I fully understand that most all of us did not have a say in many of those wounds that we received in the past. But once you identify them, you can begin to address them so you can walk into a new future. And some of you might disagree with this. I'm going to stand by it 100%. But some of us are one doctor appointment and prescription medication away from a transformed family. You're one counseling appointment, one AA sponsor away from the new family that you deeply desire. And it begins when we acknowledge what needs healed and start walking towards it. And I'm not saying these things are easy or that there's a quick fix or anything like that, but without a doubt, okay, a better version of you is better for everyone around you. That you could get whole and healthy and even healed, and you can do it for you and for your spouse and for your kids and for your grandkids and for your friends and the people who are seated around you right now. So just to be super clear, so there's no misunderstanding, there's two formulas for what we've just talked about, okay? And the first one goes like this. It is Jesus plus nothing that equals salvation. Meaning, when it comes to salvation, he is sufficient. Jesus is alone enough. It's not Jesus and do something. It's not Jesus and then fill in the blank with something else. It is Jesus plus nothing. That's how you find forgiveness, new life, a relationship with the Father. You trust in Jesus alone. Hey, here's the amazing thing, okay, that some of you have recently realized is you've taken this step to trust Jesus, maybe even been baptized, and you are seeing, like right before your very eyes, you are seeing changes in your family because of that. And some of us are one decision of faith away from spiritual healing and perhaps, I would suggest, changing your family for generations to come. When it comes to some of the other stuff, what I might call inner healing and relationships and all that, the formula goes like this. It's Jesus plus something that equals healing. I've had 3 different surgeries in my life, 1 on my elbow, 2 on my knee. Not everything was 100% perfect and in working order or corrected when I left the hospital. Hey, deep incisions were made, okay? Things were repaired, things were removed, but I had to do some hard work at physical therapy so that things were working at their full potential and things healed in a proper way. And the same is true when we talk about inner healing and relationships. So when I suggest, okay, do the work necessary to bring healing, I need you to know that I believe that you do that work with a foundation and a reliance on Jesus as the central figure in all that you do. But I do believe the formula goes something like this. It's Jesus plus a lot of praying. It's Jesus plus a small group of friends to encourage you. It's Jesus plus accountability. It's Jesus plus seeking forgiveness. Jesus plus rehab. Jesus plus a counselor. One more thing. Do I believe it's possible that you trust Jesus and ask him to lead your life and you come up after a baptism and instantly everything is resolved in your life? I do believe that. I also believe it's likely more that you trust Jesus for spiritual healing and then he leads you towards the work that is needed in your life to bring other kinds of healing that you need. That's question 1. Where do you need healing? Question 2 is very short. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? Very few of us might just flat out say, no, I'm actually comfortable this way. I don't really want to get over debilitating bitterness because that's like my ace of spades. I know my anger is killing me, but it tastes better than forgiveness. Hey, I don't want to stop, looking at pornography, even though it's killing my marriage and destroying intimacy and guilt's piling up. I don't really want to be made whole by Jesus. I've gotten along so far. Do you want to get well? Let me tell you a little bit of something about the people in your life, and I don't even need to know them personally to tell you what's true, okay? What your kids want you to say and what your spouse and your parents and your grandkids and your friends, what the people around you right now want you to say is yes. Yes. Please get well. because they know what we oftentimes find hard to see, okay? That there's a better version of us that, if healthy and healed, could make everyone and everything else better, because what doesn't get healed or at least addressed is likely to get transferred. And that's why so many of us, okay, we inherited broken things from the adults in our life, didn't we? They either didn't know they needed healing, they didn't want to do the work, and so they passed it on. You can do it differently. I mean, you can do it differently, and it starts with saying, yes, I want to get well. Because I fully believe that there is a better you that is, okay, on the road, is healing and whole, that you could pass down to the people around you that could change absolutely everything for them. So we're going to close the way that we always do. We're going to worship. You can choose to sit, pray. Actually, you can't choose to sit because I'm going to ask you to stand in just 1 second. You might take communion. It's in the front of the seat behind you. As a matter of fact, go ahead and stand. Get your act together and go ahead and stand. Because what I want to do is I want to pray over you. And we don't really do a lot of like head bowed and eyes closed kind of stuff, no looking around. But I need you to just have a moment for yourself, a minute, okay? And we still got plenty of time left with our hour together. But the worst thing we could do would be to go, okay, that kind of hit, that landed, I should think about that, and to walk out of here and not think about it. So we're going to take a minute to kind of solidify some action today, maybe, and it starts with this. Do you want to get well? For some of you, okay, that action step is spiritual today, and you're going to offer up a simple prayer. You know, you're going to say, okay, I can't do that. I don't even know how to pray. I need help. But the step might be to actually be baptized. And if you're in the room, you just go back there where Big Dan is standing, and you say, Dan, I need to be baptized, and he'll walk you through the steps. But here's what I want you to do, okay, is I want you to maybe like raise your hand if I can pray for you today. And it's a very simple question, okay? Do you want to get well? That's it. You don't have to know how. You don't have to know what all the answers are, but you have to be honest, and then I'm going to pray for you. So could you just do that? Just raise your hand. Hey, today I want to get well. I know there's something in my life that can be healed. I know that there's a better version of me somewhere. It might be spiritual. Hey, pray for me. It might be in a relationship. It might be physical. It might be emotional, mental. And I know that all of us on the inside are raising our hands. So let me pray for us today, and then we'll move. Just keep it up. Keep your hand up if you would. God, today I pray over these people right now. God, we are admitting that we need some healing in our life. God, we know it can be better. We know we can be whole. God, we know we can be healed, and we know that that comes from the power of you working in our life. So God, for those of us today who are expressing our desire for spiritual healing, God, we want to name you as the Savior, as the Lord, as our leader. God, in this moment, we just admit that our way hasn't been working. God, we admit and we feel the sickness, so to speak. We feel the distance. God, in this moment, we just ask for your forgiveness. We ask for your grace. We ask for your mercy. God, bring some peace into our life. God, believing that you can cleanse us from all the things that we've accumulated in our life. God, we believe that you can connect us into a relationship with God. That is our desire today. God, for those of us who are suffering just relationally, God, we did something. God, someone did something to us, and we've held on to it. We've planned the payback. We're not going to forgive. God, in this moment, would you just touch us deep inside of our heart and our mind today to release those people? God, if it was a parent, to let it go. God, to maybe just do the hard work, to step into that and maybe get some help to figure some things out. But God, in our relationships, God, make us whole and healthy. God, physically, some of us, like, it just doesn't work. God, I believe that maybe just in these last few minutes today, you would break out of the ordinary and the things that we would expect and the things that we think you can't do. And maybe somebody in our room would walk out of here today and things are working and they didn't when we came in. That God, you could actually heal physically today. We would ask you to do that. And God, if there's actions we can take today just to provide a better version of us so that the people around us can be better, God, that we would do that. And God, emotionally and mentally and all the things that we've suffered, the things we saw, the things we heard, the things we felt, God, that we would be the one to break the cycle, not pass it on, not teach it, not transfer it. God, would today you begin and continue just to stir inside of us, God, to activate the actions that we need today to step into this life that you have for us. So God, as we worship in these next few minutes, I pray that we give it our very best, God, that we continue to seek you, let your grace fall upon us, that we commit to acting today, God, to do our part to find health and wholeness. And we're going to pray these things today in the name of Jesus. Amen.